Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Renewable Natural Gas Information Network. It's the first call of the year. Great to see everyone back. And we've got some excellent speakers today and updates. So I'll get right into it with the standing agenda items just to kick off our RNGiNet calls. For those of you who are new, our initiative is really aimed at improving the cooperation between all RNG stakeholders by providing a forum for discussion and information exchange intended to help build a robust RNG marketplace in Canada. This is the RNGiNet really came together as a collaboration between the Canadian Gas Association and the Canadian Biogas Association, and we've been going strong for a number of years now. So good to have you join us. A few of the items that were sent with the agenda package is the terms of reference, so anyone can see that. If you have any thoughts on the terms of reference, it's intended to be an evergreen document, so please send along any recommendations. I'll touch on the accomplishments and work plan in just a moment, but first I just wanted to let you know about the participants list. Because we're aimed at improving networking and collaboration as part of that RNG marketplace, we do have a participants list that is circulated with each meeting. We operate on an opt-out basis, so you're automatically included in the participants list if you register to attend one of the RNGiNet meetings. If you do not, for whatever reason, want to be on the participants list, please let us know and we'll remove you from the list. Of course, we do encourage everyone to participate and be part of that list so people can contact you if they do have questions. We also have an RNG registry, which has a list of RNG projects, and we're always keen to update that list, to keep it up to date. As well as add new projects. So please make sure if you represent a project or have been involved in a project or projects that the RNG registry list is accurate and up to date. It's a very useful document for communicating all the latest and greatest projects across the country. And the Dropbox, of course, so that's where we put all of the foundational documents related to RNG. So any studies, any reports go there, as well as agendas and any presentations from our meetings. So they're all labeled there and nicely categorized in that Dropbox. You should all have the link there in the agenda. I will quickly share the accomplishments and work plan. So this is something that we've produced every year since we've started RNGiNet. It's a short document. I won't read every line here, but this gives you kind of an update on what we accomplished last year and what we're hoping to do this year. Again, we welcome any feedback any of you have. You can either use the chat, raise your hand, or you can send us an email separately, and we'd be happy to talk to you about this. We're over 160 participants now, so that's great. Thanks for everybody who participated. We held 4 quarterly webinars or meetings, virtual meetings last year, and we plan on continuing with that kind of pace this year. So, March, June, September, and December are when we hold those meetings. You should have calendar invites already for the 2025 meetings. We refined the terms of reference and incorporated feedback. The 4 meetings that we held, we had a range of presentations, and some of them were related to the federal budget, government policies, related to, for example, the clean fuel regulations. We had a number of utility updates. So always great to hear from the utilities and the programs that they have. We, like today, are going to hear, we heard from project developers and new technology companies. So always interesting to see kind of what the latest and greatest is in technology and project development. And highlighted RNG research reports and events. And we'll continue doing that this year. As I mentioned, we also updated the RNG Dropbox with all the presentations and links to materials. We also, continued updating the RNG registry. So keeping that up to date. In terms of the 2025 work plan, again, we're going to continue at that same pace of the 4 quarterly meetings. We're going to continue to build on that Dropbox and update the RNG contact list, participants list, and continue to provide you with timely updates on policies and programs as they develop, and update that the RNG registry with project info. If anybody has any thoughts on those, again, welcome your feedback. We want to make sure this is as productive as possible, and your time is valuable. So we want to make sure that you're getting the most out of this and that we're providing that value. One of the two items that we put on here as potential work plan items this year, given that we don't know what's going to happen with a federal election, it could be worthwhile to promote RNG to current government, whatever government's in power this year, and just let them know that clean fuels have an important role to play. As well, a briefing note on RNG in Canada that would serve as kind of background material, support our efforts, and really could be serve any participants to RNGinet in communicating the benefits of RNG to various partners, stakeholders, to let them know about RNG. So that's the 2024 accomplishment and 2025 work plan. It's a short document. I encourage you all to review it. And again, if you do have any feedback, we're always open to hear it. Okay. I don't see any hands or chat, so I'm going to pass it on to Sarah. Sarah, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Great. Thanks, Richard. Hi, everybody. Normally, Jennifer Green would be here, I believe, but I'm filling in for her for the Canadian Biogas Association. I am the Director of Policy and Communications, and I'm really pleased to present our speakers that we have today. Looks like a pretty interesting lineup. So to start, we have Blair Batchelor kicking things off. So he is the Deputy Director, Clean Fuel and Decarbonization with Natural Resources Canada. And he's going to be providing an overview and an update on the Clean Fuels Fund 2.0. So Blair, I'll invite you to turn on your camera and your mic and to share your screen as well. Hi, Blair.
Excellent. Thanks, Sarah. Trust everybody can hear me. We tested that earlier. Thanks for the quick introduction, Sarah. As Sarah indicated, I'm the Deputy Director at Natural Resources Canada, lead the team that's responsible for the Clean Fuels Fund, both the original run of the fund that started back in 2021 and our currently active version. I've got about 20-ish slides or so, and I think Sarah gave me 15 minutes, so I should have plenty of time to get through this and still have some room for questions after. I'm going to go through, give a quick overview of how we got to where we are, and then provide a description of the recently relaunched program, some key program criteria, things that are different than the first round of the program, and I can provide some explanation as to why, if there's any interest in that. Just feel free to interrupt as I go. I'm fine with that, but I will ask Sarah. I can't, in presenting mode, I've never actually been able to figure out how to see people's hands when they put them up if I'm presenting. So don't hesitate to interrupt me if you'd like.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks. So, wrong window highlighted. So moving along. talked about that. So just a little bit of context. So government recognizes clean fuels play a critical role in helping Canada to meet our net zero targets. RNG, which I mean, obviously point for this group is a key component of that mix of clean fuels, renewable diesel, hydrogen, a whole range of others as well. And the government has signaled over the last few years a commitment to supporting clean fuels. And the support comes in a variety of measures. There's investment tax credits, the clean fuel regulations that provide sort of a regulatory pull, and of course the Clean Fuels Fund itself. The Clean Fuels Fund was originally launched back in 2021. So budget 2021 was the impetus for the fund. We launched the program in June or July of that year. I don't exactly remember when. And we're working through implementation of that chunk of money from the program at this point. We're supporting just over 60 clean fuel projects right now, and this includes capital projects like production facilities across a range of fuel space, renewable diesel, renewable natural gas, some hydrogen, ethanol, probably the bulk of it. And we're providing support for feasibility and feed studies, so sort of the next year or the coming years projects that may come online, helping those bridge the gap at the very uncertain stages of the study stage, and helping provide some support across those. And we also did have a component of the 2021 program that was supporting biomass supply chains, both studies and facility construction. The purpose of that was that there was a recognition at the time the fund was set up that a steady and reliable source of biomass was going to be important for next generation facilities to move forward. Outside of that, that's sort of core pieces that my team leads. Outside of that, there's also some work going on codes and standards. We have an organization at NRCan that's leading that work. And if you have questions around that, I can certainly put you in touch with the right people there. And those codes of standards spread across the value chain: production, distribution, and end use of fuels. A key component of the initial round, the CFF1 is the shorthand that we're using for it as a team, is that all those projects that ran have to have a commissioning date of March 31st, 2026. And that's been critical because of the nature of the process that we ran. We ran a time-limited competitive process, and we had a number of projects that we had to, at the time of application, reject, for lack of a better word, because they weren't able to complete their facility by March 31st, 2026. That might become important later as we talk through things. The ongoing need for support in the clean fuel space continues to be recognized by government. We understand, like, we watch the news as much as everybody else does. It is challenging economic times for Canadian fuel producers, clean fuels and otherwise. And in recognition of that, Budget 2024 announced they used the term retooling of the Clean Fuels Fund and extension. So we were able to reprofile just under 400 million of funding, 376 million of funds that weren't used in the original fund, mostly because projects weren't able to meet final investment. And we also got an extension of the program from 2026 out through 2030. So new projects under the new program have to be wrapped up by March 31st, 2030. Just comment on the reprofile before I go further down. That reprofile includes a number of different things. There's likely ongoing support for codes and standards, as well as operating funds for the department. So that 375 isn't the entirety of that 375 isn't available to the fund itself, but a fairly significant chunk of that is. My team spent the summer and early fall working with stakeholders, working with partners, and working with some consultants around redesign of the fund. The intent of that redesign was, I'd say, twofold. One was to reduce the lead time on project recommendations. As any who were involved with the original launch of the fund are aware, we had some challenges getting initial recommendations out the door in the timeframes that we were hoping to hit. Part of that was just due to the interest in the fund, the fact that we had almost twice as many applications as we expected, but also some of the information we were asking for required a fair bit of review and may not have been as necessary as we'd expected. And we also want to try and identify. We've tweaked some of the focus on some of the questions and some of the data that we're asking for to better identify strong projects for support. We did have some projects in the first round of the fund that, though did well through our assessment process, were very interesting projects, have just failed to move forward from an investment point of view, either a range of issues with them, from site access to unable to lock in final funding. So we've made some tweaks to the way we're asking things in hope to better identify those that do have the backing moving forward. In September of last year, September 2024, we did some engagement sessions. We had really strong interest, about 600 stakeholders, as we say here, across the 5 sessions that we did. And then we had about 45 organizations providing written feedback, a range of feedback telling us, well, telling a little bit of how awesome we are and the great job we've done, but also some critical feedback as to what our plans were. And then finally, after all of that and our redesign and moving things through our approvals, on February 11th of this year, we launched the program for applications. It is one of the biggest differences from a program or from an application perspective on the program is this program is we're using what's called a continuous intake process. So it's effectively a first come first serve type of system. In the original launch of the fund, we had a time limited application window where all applications had to be in. I think it was October 13th of 2024. And then my team had to go through and evaluate all the applications prior to making recommendations. This new process, or the process we're using this time through, is what's called continuous intake, and essentially we evaluate projects as they are submitted on a first come first serve basis. We do have the authority, and that we will at some point exercise, to close the intake at any time. The most common reason for us to do that was simply that we have received enough applications to consume the entire funding envelope that we have available. We don't see any value to continuing to accept applications after we have no more money available. It's a waste of certainly a waste of your time to develop the applications, but also a waste of our time to assess them and move on them. So, but there are other reasons that we may close the intake as well, but just so you're aware of that. Now, just the bulk of the rest of the presentation, or actually the whole rest of what I was going to talk about today, is just some of the design changes in the Clean Fuels Fund that did launch. We go sort of piece by piece as I walk through, talk about eligibility and talk about some of the material that we're going to be assessing as part of for any of the applications that are submitted. So we've launched 2 separate program streams. I had commented on earlier how we had a biomass hubs value chain component of the program. That's no longer a part of the program. That wasn't renewed in the budget 2024 decision. So we are supporting capital projects still, and feasibility and studies, feasibility and feed studies. We've broken it into 2 streams. There's a general stream, what we're calling a general stream, which is open to all Canadian entities, legal entities or otherwise. So any company that's registered and has a Canadian presence. We also have an Indigenous-led stream, and this is for entities that can demonstrate a minimum of 50% Indigenous ownership. There are some nuances between the 2 streams that I'll speak to as we walk through as I walk through the presentation. But those are the 2. If you find yourself on the Clean Fuels website, you'll see those 2 streams as options. The website also has all the information around project eligibility, but really everything that I'm going to talk about today, and access to the application network or site. We're using Salesforce to manage our applications, so you would be working through that mechanism. From an eligibility point of view for fuel types, in the general stream, all liquid or gaseous fuels are eligible, with the exception of hydrogen pathways that are supported by the investment tax credit. We felt the government felt that that would be a bit of double stacking or double supporting, having the investment tax credit eligibility and the Clean Fuels Fund. So we're supporting any fuel type with the exception of those hydrogen pathways. We will accept hydrogen. We will provide support to hydrogen pathways not supported by the ITC, but not those that are. Studies, we will, in the general stream, we will provide support for all types of studies. Indigenous-led capital projects and studies are eligible for everything. We're not limiting the hydrogen pathways for the Indigenous-led capital projects, and that's a function of the way that the support was provided to Indigenous hydrogen projects in the first run of the program. We had a concept that it was end-to-end, where the idea was that an applicant could signal a need for support across the entire project lifecycle. So we're continuing to support hydrogen in that space, but not in the general stream of the program. Other than the label on the fuel, whether it's renewable natural gas or renewable diesel or hydrogen, our most way that we define a clean fuel is around the carbon intensity of the fuel. So we do have some carbon intensities which are similar to the first round of the program, but have come down a bit in recognition of additional increased amount of data that's been available for our analysis. Liquid biofuels, generally speaking, have to meet a limit of 35 grams per CO2e. That's down from 50 in the original run of the program. Sustainable aviation fuel, recognizing the additional processing that needs to go into to produce SAF is 40 grams of CO2e. And then most pertinent to this group, gaseous fuel streams, renewable natural gas has to meet a level of 31 grams per megajoule of CO2e per megajoule, and those values are determined using the Government of Canada LCA tool that also supports the clean fuel regulations and the work that Finance Canada is leading under the ITCs. A little more around fuel parameters or maybe facility parameters. The intent of the Clean Fuels Fund has always been about commercial production of fuels. The program has never been intended to support demonstration or demonstration scale projects. So we do have minimum production capacities. For gaseous clean fuels, those are 50,000 gigajoule per year, which we haven't seen too many problems with any of the projects that have come through the program meeting. Most of them are a fair bit larger than that. They're a little bit lower in Atlantic Canada and for Indigenous-led projects, and that's largely to reflect wouldn't say the lack of infrastructure, but the lower robustness of the infrastructure in Atlantic Canada and with many of the Indigenous-led projects that we've seen. Atlantic Canada and the North. Technological readiness. I've already spoken a little bit to this. So as the program is intended to support commercial scale production, we do have a cutoff of TRL 9. So any production or any facilities we consider have to be using technologies at the TRL 9 level and be designed for commercial deployment. There are other programs, and one actually just opened, I think it was last week, for clean fuels to support lower developmental work. The Energy Innovation Program at NRCan has an open call that closes on April 8th that is considering lower technology levels. So if there's an interest in those, the link to that program is right there. For funding, we're able to provide, and this is quite a bit lower than the original stream of the program, and part of it's a function of just how much money the program received compared to the original launch of the program. So we are able to provide up to $50 million in funding, or 30% of capital expenses, whichever limit you hit first. In the general stream, Indigenous-led projects on the capital stream is 50-50. So we were able to provide a little bit more support in a percentage environment for the Indigenous-led projects. And for studies, we can provide up to $5 million or 75% of project expenses. And again, the projects must be, it says commissioned here for the purposes of studies, be complete by March 31st, 2030. Maybe one thing to touch on here, just because it does create some confusion and we're developing better guidance around it. The concept of commissioning does not necessarily mean that the project is operational. It's really about the project being capable of being operational at its nameplate capacity. So it is entirely possible that the project doesn't, for any of a range of reasons, not go into operation the day the project ends. And we do understand that, but that's not our concern. It really is about the capacity, the capability of the project itself. All contributions continue to be conditionally repayable. This is no change from the original stream of the program, except for the studies. And the reason behind that is conditionally repayable. The conditional part of that is centered around project profitability. Studies don't actually, at least initially, generate profit. It's only the final facility. Other projects which could be, or contributions which could be non-repayable would include those to nonprofit organizations, or those to Indigenous-led projects that can demonstrate ownership of greater than 50%. So the threshold to get into the program is 50%, but if they can demonstrate greater than 50%, and thus, from a legal perspective, control of the project, then we can consider a non-repayable contribution to them. There is some additional conditions around the permitting, the dividends, and how monies go back to stakeholders that we would have to look at as well. On the funding side of things, so at the time of application, we're expecting that a minimum of 30% of the project costs have been secured, or conditionally secured. So at the time of application, let's say you're asking the Clean Fuels Fund for 30% of your project cost. So there's 70% remaining. We would expect that 30 of that remaining 70% is already secured, whether it's internally through the company, and that could be demonstrated simply by a letter from the CFO or the CEO indicating that money has been set aside for the project, or through some other investment mechanism. The conditionally secured is just in recognition that some of that funding may be, that funding letter may say something along the lines of pending receipt of funding from the Clean Fuels Fund, this funding is secured. So we didn't want to trying to avoid a chicken and egg situation where you needed our funding before you could get other funding, and to give that flexibility. For Indigenous-led, it's 25%. The biggest and most important thing to understand on this one is that funding that's not secured at the time of application, that's acceptable and fine. We will look at the application, and it doesn't have a significant factor in our decision making. But we do need to have all fundings secured prior to signing our contribution agreement. So if 10 or 20 or 30% of the funding isn't secure at the time of application, it has to be by the time we sign the contribution agreement. This has been a big, significant holdup for a number of projects that we've been working with. Just the inability to finalize the rest of the funding. We cannot proceed. It's not a program decision, and we don't want to proceed. It's we can't. It's outside the authorities that I have available to me. And there is an ongoing need for any project that we're working with a contribution agreement to provide provide us updated information on the contributions that go towards the project. If additional funding comes from somewhere else, if additional government funding is found, we just need to be aware of that as it progresses. As I said, the projects are conditionally, the contribution agreements are conditionally repayable. There's no change here from the original stream of the program, so I'll go over it fairly quickly. What that means is if there's any profit generated for up to 10 years after the commissioning date, a portion of those profits would be repayable to the government. They just go back into general revenue. They don't come back to the program itself. But and the way that amount is determined is it's a straight multiplication. Annual profit, the repayable contribution would be the annual profit times the percentage of NRCan's contribution. So if NRCan was supporting the project at 30%, it would be annual profit times 30%, and that 30% would be repayable back to the government. Just to be clear here, if there is no profit in either on an annual basis or across that 10 years, it's obviously unfortunate. It is something that we would like to see, and I'm sure as facility owners you would like to see. But if there is no profit, the contribution doesn't need to be repaid. There's no expectation of repayment at the end of the 10 years. There's no expectation that even full repayment occurs over that window. But if there is profit, then there is some of that profit that does come back to the government. I guess maybe one way to look at in a kind of worst case scenario, if the facility is up and running and doing wonderfully and generating a regular profit, the contribution from the Clean Fuels Fund would ultimately end up kind of like a zero interest loan, because we don't claim interest we don't look for interest on any of the contributions in their repayment, but that could be a window that you find yourselves in if the facility is profitable. Quickly, just on the application process. So we are doing all our applications are being done through the NRCan's Transportation and Fuels Decarbonization Program's online portal. If you don't have the link there, that's an oversight on my part. I should have provided the link there. If you don't have it, please let me know and I'll make sure it gets to you. That portal it's a Salesforce supported application portal. It provides a window through which you can provide all the documentation, answer key questions, and provide all the information that the program needs for their review. Once we have a completed application, and once we have an application submitted to us, we will review internally for completeness and to ensure that it meets our program requirements. At the end of that internal review, the applicant will receive will receive a letter indicating either that the program has accepted the complete application and the application is moving towards technical and financial review, or if the application is found to be incomplete, we'll let you know that it's incomplete and it will have been rejected. In the case of rejection, there's nothing stopping an applicant from reapplying. There's the only limitation will be the program's availability of program funding. On the evaluation needs, as I said, we've sort of tweaked and taken a look at some of the criteria that we're looking at. We're placing a little more focus on the corporate executive team, basically the sponsors behind the project, because we found through the first run of the program that this was a key metric that we could be used to understand project success. The project teams as well, the financial team, the technical teams, and the management teams and how they work together. Site access, again, we lost a couple of projects simply because they were unable to find site access. So we've moved this up so it's not a delaying issue later as we're doing negotiations, that executed land access agreement is required at the time of application. And partnership agreements. We want to understand who the key partners that you're working with are, because those can certainly lead strength to a project. Other things that we found have delayed things, so we've moved them up in our application, are any work that's been going on around impact assessment and duty to consult. We found that those are very important, and in past have not always been considered, but can be considered create considerable delay on the project's part. And of course, the fuel carbon intensity, the life cycle assessment report needs to be prepared using the government's LCA model. And that part of that report would provide a description around assumptions and calculations that were used to determine what the value was. Kind of touched on this already, so I'm going to skim over it. But all to say is in the last bullet, those that ultimately get through completeness and mandatory review and are reviewed on merit and move for recommendation. So basically, successful projects will receive a letter of conditional approval. And what that letter of conditional approval is essentially a indication that we are interested in supporting the project and we want to work with you. And it kicks off negotiation of the contribution agreement, and that negotiation occurs between my team and your representatives. You would be taking a look, obviously, at the legal text, but also we will be locking in dollar amounts on a year-by-year basis, locking in tasks associated with the project. And ultimately what that contribution agreement becomes is a contract between ourselves and yourselves that clearly lays out what is expected on the proponent side of things and what they can expect from us around payments and repayments for the project. that is about it. That's all I had to go through. If you do have any questions that you think of after the fact, and I apologize, Sarah, I think I've gone a little bit over time here. Please don't hesitate to contact us at that email address. We have a we'll work through those and answer questions as quickly as we can. The website here is where the Clean Fuels Fund, the program pages reside, both the Indigenous and the general stream. A simple Google search of Clean Fuels Fund should find you that if you can't don't have time to type that out or don't feel like typing that out. And same thing here, the online application portal. This is the link to it. It's not a very pretty URL, but if you make it to that Clean Fuels Fund website, this online application link is on that site, so you will find it. That was really quickly what's been consuming the last, well, in short order, the last few months of my life, but in a longer term, the last couple of years of my life. So I'm going to stop sharing, and if there's time, I'm open to responding to any questions. If there's no time, I apologize for talking longer than I intended to.
Well, no, that's great, Blair. Thank you so much for all that background. I don't see any questions in the chat or any hands raised. Maybe it's my visibility, but I would encourage anyone to put any questions in the chat and maybe you can answer them as they come up. I just have one quick question. Since this is a continuous application process, I know our members were super keen when they heard the portal was open and really wanted to get their application in quickly. One thing I wasn't so clear on from the presentation is how long it's taking to review the current applications and if people are already being notified or when they will be notified.
Without giving away too much inside baseball, nobody has been notified yet.
Okay.
We have started to receive applications. I can share that much. The program is still, the portal's still open, which means there is still money available for consideration. Yeah, that's the gist of it. I will say, and there's still some uncertainty here without, I was not supposed to say too much around this, but I mean, as everybody's aware, there is a possibility of the government moving into an election mode in the next weeks, possibly. That does place some constraints around what we're able to do and to communicate. So there may be some delays on that side, but we are continuing. We will, assuming nobody changes the direction I've been given to date, we will continue to accept applications. We will continue to do our assessments internally. We may be limited in how much we can communicate back and forth. That's not 100% clear to us yet, to be honest.
Okay.
To be frank.
Okay. Well, that's good. Good to know it's still open, and maybe shortly you will be notifying people, but not yet. So, okay.
Nothing. Nobody's missed an email yet. So.
Okay. Perfect. Great. Well, thank you so much, Blair, for sharing that with us.
I will stay on probably for another 20 minutes or so and watch the chat, though I see someone's got something in the chat.
Okay, perfect. Well, yeah, feel free to answer that in the chat. We'll move on to the next presenter, just given the time, but thank you.
Certainly.
So I will call Ariane forward. So if you'd like to share your screen, turn on your camera. So Ariane is the Senior Business Development Manager with Electrokea.
Electrokea, correct.
Electrokea, perfect. And she's going to be sharing about their biomethanization technology. So a bit of a pivot from the Clean Fuels Fund, but looking more onto the technology side. So Ariane, when you are ready, share your screen and go ahead.
Thank you. All right. Here. So thank you everybody for having me today. I'm actually presenting today, and I just want to make a little correction here. Our biomethanation technology, which is a little bit different than the biomethanization term that often get confused. And so without further ado, I'll start with a short introduction of Electrokea. So oh, give me a second. There we go. So Electrokea, we are a growth stage power to gas company based out of Germany. We essentially developed a biomethanation technology. Biomethanation is the process of producing RNG from, so renewable natural gas from hydrogen and carbon dioxide. So I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. We have demonstrated the technology in different industrial pilots around the world, and we are now focusing on the commercialization of this technology with a focus in Canada. So this is a great opportunity for me to, share a little bit about the technology and also raise awareness about biomethanation. So here you'll see on this little graph here the basic of what biomethanation is. So essentially, we utilize the two inputs to our system will be renewable energy, typically to produce clean hydrogen by breaking down the molecules of water into hydrogen and oxygen. So hydrogen, goes in the system. The second input to our system is carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide can come from different sources. So the reason why it's relevant for most of you here is that the CO2 can come from a biogas flow, a landfill gas flow, either from your upgrading biogas facilities, but also can be raw biogas or raw landfill gas that can go directly into a methanation unit. So the two inputs, hydrogen and CO2, it comes in our system. You'll see this little column in the middle of our system. Basically, it's a water column which contains our microorganism at the center of it. So I'll talk a little bit more about those in a second. So big water column with those microorganisms inside. We have an agitator in this column. The two gases, hydrogen and carbon dioxide, go in at the bottom of the tower. And then we rotate this water with our microorganism. And then this hydrogen and CO2 gets transformed into synthetic methane or RNG, and then can be directly injected into the gas grid. So this is the basic of what methanation is. And at the center of our technology are ancient microorganisms that are called archaea. So if you think about our name, electrochaea, it's obviously to bring to the front the little microorganisms that are working for us in this technology. So archaeas are microorganisms that have been on the planet for billions of years. So we will find them at the bottom of the ocean. We will find them in volcanoes. We will find them, actually, you'll find some in your biogas plants. And they typically live in very harsh environments. And what they do in nature, they only do one thing. They eat the CO2 and the hydrogen from the atmosphere, and they reject methane. So electrochaea, we are not reinventing the wheel in any way. We have just just utilized a natural process that happens in the nature to work for us towards the energy transition. So electrochaea, we have our selected and evolved strain of archaea that is patented, and this is the base of our technology, and we use it to create low CI, what we like to call biocat methane, but essentially RNG. So as I mentioned before, we have scaled the technology for commercial production. So we have from 2015 to 2021 operated 2 industrial pilot projects in Denmark and Switzerland, where we have actually tested the technology with both a pure CO2 source being mixed with hydrogen to produce synthetic methane, but also we have tested this technology with raw landfill gas and raw biogas in this technology. So when I say we can utilize raw landfill gas and raw biogas, essentially what that means is that with our system, you can basically double the quantity of RNG that is being produced on a landfill or a biogas site, because the CO2, which is at the moment in most of those projects is a waste and simply emitted to the atmosphere, we can utilize it as an input to our system to transform it into RNG, and depending on the composition of your gas, almost double the quantity of RNG produced in one site without needing more biomass to double this production. So this is, we have proven this technology at the industrial pilot scale level over 5 years. And then since 2020, we have scaled the design to a commercial design. So we have developed a standard design that is 10 times the size of our pilot scale. To give you an idea, this 10 megawatt, which we like to call, which is equivalent to the electricity needed to operate the electrolyzer, is a site that can produce is a plant that can produce around 5 million normal cubic meter of RNG per annum, just to give an idea of the size. And so this design has been completed already for years, and it's now the basis of our first commercial project, the Biocat Waslev project, that is in permitting phase in Denmark at the moment. So this is a project that Electrokia is working on. Parallelly to designing and working on this first commercial size project, we have continued to scale the technology in collaboration with our strategic partner, Baker Hughes, and scaled to 75 megawatt, so 7.5 bigger than our first commercial design, which is essentially 3 modules of 25 megawatt to address, we like to call it climate relevant scale, so bigger industrial CO2 sources such as pulp and paper mills, could be CO2 coming from pulp and paper mills, could be from a waste incinerator, or industrial CO2 coming from aluminum, cement plant, and so on. So we are working with Baker Hughes because they are a strategic partner, and they have a portfolio of carbon capture technologies that are compatible with this joint design, where we can capture the carbon coming from those big sites and then utilize this carbon directly in our methanation plant. So this is where we are in terms of scaling and commercial readiness for the technology. And you must be wondering, why is Canada then one of the target market for us? So when we think about methanation business case, there are three main criteria that we are looking at. So one of them is the availability and accessibility of renewable electricity. So this is one very important one. We have to look at the renewable profile of the electricity, because without a renewable electricity, we're not producing clean hydrogen, and then we're producing very expensive fossil methane. So the renewable energy is very important, and the accessibility, but also the price at which we can get it, will drive the production price of our renewable natural gas. The second one is accessibility to carbon dioxide. That in most markets is never an issue to, find CO2 sources. For us, the lower hanging fruit are CO2 coming from upgrading biogas, upgrading a landfill gas, upgrading projects, because this is CO2 that is already being captured, let's say, separated and captured, where we can essentially just plug our system to a flow of pure CO2. So, from the Canadian Biogas Association side, I saw that we have in Canada nearly 300 active biogas and landfill gas upgrading projects already. So there is an interesting pool of CO2 available for projects like ours. And then finally, the gas offtake opportunities are, for like any RNG project, very important. But what we find really interesting in Canada is that there are long-term opportunities at competitive price that are inclusive of RNG produced from methanation. So typically, I'm referencing to Quebec, that is including RNG from methanation as part of the gas that they can offtake at the same price, in the same price ranges as RNG from biogas. So these are one of the, very high level why we are interested in Canada as a target market for the deployment and commercial deployment of our technology. So specifically for the Canadian market, with Quebec in focus as an entry market, we have actually designed a skid-based 5 megawatt product. So just to give you again an idea, it's a size of plant that can produce an additional 2 million cubic meter per annum of RNG on an existing biogas site or landfill site. So we have designed this product that is cost effective, can be rapidly deployed because it's a standard product that can be replicated, and basically, as I mentioned before, can optimize the utilization of CO2 on biogas and landfill sites. So on top of converting, the CO2 into additional RNG, we can also capture the methane slips typically contained in CO2 from some of the sites, and we can increase revenues for site owners and improve the site carbon intensity as a whole. So this is the product that we have developed for Quebec, and are planning to deploy in Canada and the US. 5 megawatts is the size that we have defined is for many reasons, specifically for the Quebec market, where we have a constraint on the electricity access, but also where we see in Canada, there's a lot of this sweet spot of CO2 amount. We see that a lot of the biogas and landfill projects in Canada will fit into that kind of size for methanation. And finally, I want to close out this presentation by thanking the Canadian Biogas Association and Canadian Gas Association for having me today, giving me a platform to introduce, our company, our technology. I think for new innovative technology like Electrokea, it's really important to have those kind of, platform to educate, to bring awareness to new technology. And I want to use this platform today to drive, one message that is really important for us at Electrokea, especially in Canada, and it's the inclusivity, to keep in mind inclusivity when defining RNG. So here, I took a couple of definitions from different entities or government, where RNG is defined differently in different jurisdiction. And if we look at the RNGinet definition of RNG on your website, but also the United States Environmental Protection Agency, we see that RNG is defined specifically from like a source that begins as biogas or landfill gas. And I think this is a definition that is true, but that is exclusive of a new technology that are also producing a drop-in replacement for natural gas, a renewable drop-in replacement for natural gas. And this is important, awareness is important for a company like Electrokea, because those specific definition can be harmful in the future, because it can exclude us from having access to certain subsidy program, or or be included in some in some decisions at a regulatory level, and not because of specifically targeted, but really because people just don't know about our technology, and simply it's the wording can sometimes be exclusive. So I just wanted to give two different examples at the bottom of this slide where, for example, in Quebec, in the law, natural gas is defined. So natural gas is from a renewable source. Obviously, when it comes from, organic materials like biogas and landfill gas, but they include additionally a definition that renewable natural gas can come from hydrogen, renewable hydrogen combined with carbon dioxide, which is inclusive of RNG produced from methanation, and that gives us access in Quebec to the same privilege from the offtaker, the RNG offtaker, with the same conditions as any other RNG gas. In the EU, for example, they have the definition, what we call biogas in Canada, they call it biomethane. So they have a term for biogas from natural gas coming from biogas, but they also have a different terms that they call renewable fuels of non-biological origin, which basically defines renewable fuel that are coming from other than biomass. And RFNBOs then have a definition and also have access to their own subsidies and their own criteria for regulation and so on. So I just wanted to point that out and leave this as a final message, that inclusivity is really important for the deployment of new technology such as us, but also for educational purposes when people read definition of RNG and can raise questions, and questions are always good. So I'm gonna stop here and I'm happy to answer any questions from the people. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Ariane. Thank you for clarifying it's biomethanation, not biomethanization. So that's
okay.
Really great. I think it's so interesting that this technology can be co-located with biogas facilities and leverage existing natural gas connections in the end for injection. I think that's really great. And your message about inclusivity on the definition of RNG is really something important to raise awareness about. So thank you for including that as well. We do have one question in the chat. I think we just have time for the one question. So it's from Al. So he's just wondering about what the original production capacity of the plant is in Quebec.
Sure. So like this 5 megawatt, product that we're developing for the Quebec market, it will be for plants that are currently already producing 2 to 3 million cubic meter. 2 to 3 million cubic meter of RNG per annum.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for that. If there are any further questions, please put them in the chat, and Ariane, perhaps you could just answer them in the chat if any others come up.
Definitely. And if anybody is interested, in learning more for your own site or in general, please feel free to contact me.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ariane. Thank you. So our last speaker is John, who is the CFO of Highbury Energy. And John is going to be discussing their biomass gasification technology and project. So John, thank you. We see you with your camera on. If you'd just like to share your screen, you can begin your presentation.
And do you have the screen in front of you?
Yeah, looks good. Okay,
excellent. So good morning, everyone. I'll try and keep us on schedule and on time. I'm with Highbury Energy. We are a new technology company that is an overnight success. We started back in 2008, have been working on this for a very long time. And I think the world has finally come to the realization of where we need to be in our various, let me hang on here, get that page. There we go. So very quickly, Highbury takes waste biomass and through using a bubbling bed, dual bed gasifier, converts that waste biomass into syngas. The syngas is a combination of hydrogen and carbon monoxide. This is being led by Dr. Paul Watkinson, Professor Emeritus at UBC, was sponsored out of UBC, and has advanced to the point where we are basically ready for commercialization. Why are we looking at the pulp industry? Well, the pulp industry has consumes or emits carbon dioxide in the tune of 2.2 million tons. It's 35% of the industrial emissions in BC. The pulp mills in BC consume 7.3% of the natural gas in BC, and it is a pulp mill. 61% of its emissions will come from natural gas. So it's the sweet spot where we can actually move the dial. The opportunities in the lime kiln in the calcination process. So if Highbury can displace natural gas in the lime kiln where it's used for the thermal energy is used for the calcination process, that's where the opportunity is to displace natural gas seamlessly in a lime kiln. There's a schematic of our dual bed gasifier. You can see that we put in biomass. It is the moisture of the biomass which gives us the steam. So it looks like it's a separate steam flow, but actually when the biomass comes in at the 15% moisture content, that is the source of the hydrogen that we put into our syngas. We operated a pilot at the UBC facility for 6 years. What's special about our syngas is it is nitrogen-free, levelized energy value of 12 megajoules per cubic meter. Because we're using waste biomass, we are 100% renewable. Our CI is 8.5. So really brings down the carbon footprint of the calcination process. The technology is new to Canada. It is been used in Europe in a number of plants. So while new to our neck of the woods, it is actually operating successfully in many other places. Another schematic, you can see the biomass comes in, we pull off the syngas, then the char is moved to the second bed on the right. That is the combustor. It's where the char gets combusted. So the biomass is gasified at around 800 degrees Celsius. Then the sand moves into the combustor with the char, where air is introduced, and it raises the temperature of the sand back up to 930 degrees Celsius, where it then comes back into the gasifier chamber. By using this dual bed gasification process, we are able to keep the syngas essentially nitrogen-free. And you'll see why that is very important shortly. Again, medium BTU, ranging between 12 and 14%. If we're looking at the syngas for a heat application, we run it around 14. If we need it for a Fischer-Tropsch application where we need the hydrogen to be up at a 2-to-1 ratio to the carbon monoxide, the tar reforming process and whatnot brings down the heat value to the 12 megajoules per cubic meter. There's a picture of the pilot plant that we operate. It's about 3 stories tall. We used a number of different biomass samples in the operation. We used different sizes. We used sawdust and chunks. We used pellets. We used a number of different biomasses. Basically, the process can take sawdust and chunky biomass at the same time. That's important because one of the feedstocks that will be available to this is residuals in the forest, what we would call bush grind. When a tree is harvested, most operations now top the tree at a 4-inch top. Branches and tops are left behind. Also, trees that are unsuitable for either a pulp mill or a sawmill are also left behind, piled together, and burned in the fall. It's called slash, and it's burned in the fall. Downside of slash is if it's burned, you do create CACs, small carbon particles, which I think are around 45 times worse than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas. That, or it's left in the forest to rot when it produces methane, which is about 30 times the carbon dioxide. So either way, slash is a problem. Utilizing the slash, don't want to be picking up the piles, because once it's rolled around in the mud, it's got a lot of inorganic contaminants in the slash. But the big opportunity is to access that biomass that's currently being left in the forest. No incremental trees need to be harvested to support the use of the syngas. We're basically better utilization of what's in the forest. As I said, it's a seamless process, and we'll get to that. But right now, this is another schematic of the gasifier. You can see the where we create the gas, we cool it, we filter it, we scrub it, and then we introduce it into the lime kiln. We can also filter and clean the combustor outgas, the flue gas from that. So it's a very clean process and self-sustaining. The energy for the whole process comes from the char. So after startup, once you get the machine up and running, it is perpetual. It's getting all its energy requirements from the waste biomass. This is one of the most exciting slides we have here. This is why this works so well in a lime kiln. Our heating value is only 1/3 of natural gas, but because we've got that hydrogen in there, we get the flame temperature within 5 degrees of methane, methane being the top line. Fuel-air ratio is 1/3. So even though we've got 1/3 the energy of natural gas, the fuel-air ratio is 1/3. Net result is the beautiful number you see on the far right-hand column. That is the flue volume going through, and we're at 300 cubic meters per gigajoule. Natural gas is actually 337, and early first generation gasifiers, because they had the nitrogen contamination, they ended up with 397 cubic meters of flue volume blowing through the lime kiln per gigajoule. That results in your product not staying in the lime kiln. And since the whole idea is the calcination process on the lime and the renewal of the lime, the slower the flue gas is blowing through, the better is, the more seamless displacement of natural gas you get. As I indicated earlier, the pulp mills in BC use a lot of natural gas, 3.5 million gigajoules. That's 2,300 ton per year of carbon dioxide emissions. Our gasifier would displace, the one we're looking at would be a 200 ton per day. It would displace 700,000 gigajoules of natural gas, which would save 45,000 tons of carbon dioxide emissions. Canada has 28 pulp mills, just looking at the pulp mills with the calcination process. So the opportunity is large. And the other opportunity is it takes what is a low value product, it's the biomass that's left in the forest, and we're able to harvest that. It's like the old expression, gleaning. We go in and get what's been left behind, and we make it into value. Just a better utilization of the forest. It can help in a number of areas where you either are fireproofing a small community, moving back the forest and thinning the forest and getting economic value out of the thinnings, whether it's taking areas where you've got a sub-economic forest stand, and because you're able to utilize the sub-economic trees and tops and make something out of them, other otherwise uneconomical forest stands become utilizable. Forward. So this is where we're at. We were, as I said, overnight success. We started back in 2008. We ran the pilot scale for 6 years. Thank you, UBC, for working with us on that. We've just completed a techno-economic assessment assisted by Natural Resources Canada, Energy Innovation Program, and also assisted by Natural Gas Innovation Fund. We've been working with West Fraser. Thank you for their assistance. We were looking at the Caribou Pulp and Paper Mill at Quesnel, BC, and did a extensive study, the result of which was that while that this would be a viable technology for the decarbonization of the lime kiln. The project is not going forward at this time. There's just a lot of turmoil right now in the BC forest industry, and I think until all that turmoil is resolved, it doesn't make sense to be making this investment in BC. There is a opportunity elsewhere in Canada, which we are exploring. The nice thing about BC was that an order in council number 306 gave syngas the same standing as renewable natural gas. And we were working with Fortis BC, looking to utilize this syngas as a displacement of natural gas. Obviously, it would be a standalone operation. We couldn't put it into the pipeline since it is hydrogen and carbon monoxide, but it was a great decarbonization opportunity, and it is by no means done yet. As I said, thank you to UBC, thank you to West Fraser, NGIF, and the Natural Resources Canada. And I talked fast, but I knew we were getting down to the wire, and I wanted to leave some opportunity for any questions.
Wonderful, John. Thank you. Much appreciated. Yeah, so please, anyone, put your questions in the chat. I have a couple for you. So
certainly,
you mentioned that the facility uses a lot of you've tried different types of biomass. But you don't want to use something like slash because it could have more inorganic contaminants in it. So I'm just wondering how the system, what is its tolerance for inorganic contaminants? Do you need a pretty clean feedstock for it to operate?
We would like a clean feedstock, and a clean feedstock would be at basically what the pellet industry uses, would be acceptable. And that's just discipline on the harvesting. You don't throw it on the ground, roll around in the mud, push it together with D9 cat, and then use it. You harvest it, you treat it the way you treat the logs, the pulp logs. You harvest them, you handle them properly. So it's slash actually is what we'd love to go. Also mill residuals, sawdust. Most of those are committed to the power boilers that the pulp mills use. But what's left in the forest, if handled properly, not an issue, not a problem.
Okay. And in terms of the feedstock access, I'm wondering, is it pretty seamless to bring this low value biomass to the pulp mills? Like if they're harvesting anyway and bringing material from the forest, is it kind of easy enough just to also bring that low value material?
It is just as easily. In fact, probably what's best is if it's at the same time the tree is harvested, while they're loading up the logs, we're grinding and loading up the biomass and bringing it in on the same logging operation. It would just that seems to be the most logical, as opposed to pulling the logs, leaving big piles, and then coming in afterwards and trying to get the piles. It's from
Excellent.
Industry experience, doing it all at the same time seems to be the most efficient, most cost effective, keeps the cost per ton of biomass low.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And in terms of the pulp mills implementing this technology, it seemed like the main motivations are, decarbonization. And it seems like you mentioned, with the rising carbon price, it would be cost beneficial to use this instead. Yes. Are there any other motivations for implementing this technology instead of just continuing to use natural gas?
Yes. Under the Order in Council 306, we're allowed to sell it to the utilities at up to $32 a gigajoule, which covers off all our costs, decent profit in there. So this would be a profitable technology at that pricing. If it's profitable, they will come. It's not something that has to be subsidized. It's not something that, you know, this is a nice to do. No, this is a profitable. Most pulp mills in North America operate at very low profit margins. We've looked at a number of cases where this would be a large increase in their profit margin. So it decarbonizes. I think a lot of the industry is actively looking at decarbonizing. We've looked at scrubbing our syngas before it goes into the lime kiln. I think what would be more appropriate would be to scrub the emissions after they come out of the lime kiln. You've got a pretty rich carbon dioxide stream, probably over 15% carbon dioxide in the flue gas for most pulp mills. When natural gas comes out of the ground, it's coming out of the ground at 10 to 15% carbon dioxide. It's called formation carbon dioxide. Most of the big scrubbing operations you see in the oil and gas industry are removing that carbon dioxide at the point of extraction, and hence they're putting just pure methane down the pipelines. So the industry is we already have the technologies to scrub flue gases at a 15% level. So
you mean scrub the flue gas and recover the carbon dioxide?
You would do that, and you then sequester that.
Okay. Or use it for biomethanation, as we learned about with electrochaea. There we go.
You could.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Well, I'll let the attendees, if they have any questions, to pop those in the chat. But thank you so much, John, for this informative presentation, for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Well, thank you. So I will just continue on with the agenda. I just wanted to bring to your attention a few RNG events that are coming up. I can't actually see the attendee list for some reason, so I don't know who is already going to the Valley of Biogas East or who knows about it. I assume most of you do, but it's coming up in less than 2 weeks in Toronto. So not next week, but the week after, March 17th to 19th. So if you haven't registered for that yet and you're planning on attending, I really encourage you to do that. We do have the hotel room block is almost closed, but we do have a few left. So if you're coming and you haven't booked your hotel room yet, send me a message and we can arrange something for you. We have a really great program lined up, a day and a half of really informative talks. We have different provincial focuses. We talk about case studies, international perspectives, different technology elements. So it's pretty varied. We have our exhibitor space with over 60 exhibitors that are going to be there. And we are aiming again for over 400 attendees. So if you haven't registered yet, I really encourage you to do that. And we have just a few spots remaining on the tour for Monday, which is May 17th. And that will be going to the Walker East and South landfills in Niagara Falls. And they actually have 3 different things to show us about how they're utilizing the biogas at the landfill. So it should be really interesting. So just a little plug there for the Valley of Biogas East, March 17th to 19th. After that, in April, there's the RNG Forum in Drummondville, Quebec, which is April 8th to 10th, and registration is open for that now. And also April 28th to 30th, there's the Biogas Americas Conference happening in Denver, Colorado. So that's just a little plug for events. Again, feel free to contact me with any questions about the Valley of Biogas East. And I will hand it back over to Richard just to address any other business and close out the meeting.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Sarah. And thanks to all the presenters. That was excellent. Really enjoyed hearing about everything going on at Enercan and with your technologies. I don't think we have any other business. If you have any feedback for us on this meeting or RNGiNet in general, please do reach out to myself or Kevin or Jen or Deb or any of the characters that you get emails from related to RNGiNet. And yeah, always looking forward to hearing from you. And if you have any thoughts, suggestions on if you want to present at an RNGiNet, please reach out. And that's it. Enjoy the rest of your day and week. And yeah, we'll speak to all of you soon enough. Thanks, everyone.